Breakfast being the most important meal of the day is an advertising slogan by cereal companies, right? They want to sell you breakfast. They want to sell cereal. That's their function. It's a bit like, shaving companies. They don't care how you shave, as long as you buy their razor blades, because that's what they sell. Cereal companies sell cereal. They do not sell you the most important meal of the day. They sell you cereal, right? Rice, Krispies. They sell you wheat or corn flakes, right? That's what they sell. They're shifting a product, right? Now, I think that they're also responsible, though I'm not quite sure exactly how we lay the blame on this, but for the bad press that fat got in the early 70s. So at the same time as the whole breakfast is the most important meal of the day came out, we also got fat is really bad for you. Fat is the thing that makes you get fat. And everything suddenly had to become low fat, right? Well, this happened at the same time. Now, maybe the cereal companies weren't to blame for that, but that's garbage too. So, the bottom line is this. You need fat. You need cereal or starch. You need sugar. You need protein. And you need a whole bunch of micronutrients, right? That's what you need. Biologically, you need all that stuff, right? If you eat too much of it, you'll get fat. That's the bottom line, right? So, yes. Well, trouble with cereal is it's almost entirely sugar. A lot of the breakfast companies add sugar to their cereal. But even something like cornflakes, they're basically just starch, right? Starch is sugar. This is one thing that people don't really seem to get. And it's almost impossible for you not to digest it. And why is it you absorb all the sugar that comes into your body? Why do you do this? Well, the answer, of course, is that as a species, we evolved in a low energy environment. It's actually quite easy to get hold of fat. It's quite easy to get hold of protein, because all you have to do is catch and eat an animal. Getting hold of sugar is harder. First of all, most of the sugar in plants is bound up in a molecule called cellulose, right? Which is a complex sugar. It's made of glucose, which is the product of photosynthesis. And that glucose, we need one of these fellas. Yeah, so cellulose is a sugar polymer. It's lots of sugar molecules stuck together, but they're stuck together in such a way that we don't have the enzymes to break them down, so we evolved in a very energy-poor environment. We could get hold of protein and fat quite easily by catching animals and eating them, but getting hold of energy was hard, right? Because plants lock it up in cellulose. See all this stuff here? All this? This is cellulose. All of these leaves up here, cellulose. The flowers, cellulose. Basically, all the sugar in this plant is locked up as cellulose, and we can't digest cellulose, right? Now, some plants, because they get so much energy, where do they get it from? They get it from the sun, up there. Where's the sun? You see the sun in there? Energy comes from the sun, right? And plants have limitless amounts of energy, so they don't grow up in an energy-poor environment. They've got loads of energy. Some plants are able to make energy available as a present. It's a kind of I scratch your back, you scratch my back thing with the plants, right? What they do is they produce a fruit, which we like to eat. It's got lots of energy in it because there's sugar in there. And in return for the energy, we take the plant's seeds off and deposit them somewhere else. The seeds are capable of either being chucked away by us or passing through our digestive system. So plants give us energy in return for doing a job for them. So we're kind of plant slaves in some ways. Okay. We evolved in an energy-poor environment, so sugar's very hard to get hold of. And then, of course, we invented agriculture. And suddenly, we have an energy-rich environment. We figured out how to make the plants our servants. We came up with farming. We can figure out how to get the starch out of seeds, and starch we can digest. Right? We can digest the starch in potatoes. We can digest the starch in rice. We can digest the starch in wheat, corn. Right? Anyway, breakfast, the most important meal of the day. Cereal companies trying to sell cereal, right? And they badmouth fat at the same time, or at least it all came out at the same time. Right? But is it the most important meal of the day? I mean, maybe they're right. You know, maybe it's just a marketing ploy, but maybe they're right. Is it the most important meal of the day? Well, I would argue that it isn't. And I'll give you my reasoning in the form of a little picture that you can have in your mind. You've seen those David Attenborough documentaries, brilliant stuff, you know, Life on Earth and all that stuff. And out on the plains of the Serengeti, we see lions. And when we see lions that have had a good breakfast, what do we see? We see a lion who's fast asleep with his toes up in the air. That's what we see from a lion that's had a good breakfast. Right? Because when we get energy, what we want to do is hang on to it, not waste it. So once we've had a good meal, we naturally just stop. We sit down and say, I'm just going to live as long as I can off this energy, and then when I run out, I'll go and get some more. Right? When we have lions, we see lions that haven't had their breakfast yet. What we see is an active animal, perked up ears. They don't have very pointy ears, lions, little round ears. Perked up ears, eyes focused on the job of catching a zebra or a gnu or whatever it is they go after. And they're working, right? So I think this is a lesson for life. Leave your meal until you've done your work, right? Work for your meal. Think of it that way. That way, you're alive to the job. Every single animal in the world does that. When they've got the energy, you keep it, you conserve it, you don't waste it on trivial things like learning or work, right? So if you want to be good at your job or you want to really focus on your work, and I do this myself, it's a process that I use myself, is don't eat in the morning. Now, there's a whole lot of people who are going to call me some kind of pariah for saying this. And maybe they're right. But in my experience, at least certainly for me, I'm far more active in the morning if I haven't eaten. I'm out there trying to, I can fool my brain into thinking that I need to get some energy, and I'm going to get some energy by doing a good day's work. Right? So it fires me up to get on with stuff. If I have a big breakfast, I just don't feel like that. I feel like I've done my work, I've got the job, I've got the energy. And I put my toes up and relax. It's very hard to think. Lunchtime, I have a very simple lunch as well. And I don't really eat until I get home in the evening and have a big meal in the evening. So, for me, breakfast is the least important meal to have a big meal with. Have a wee bit. And make it not energy, make it protein. Make it a bit of fat. Nothing wrong with either of those two things. We need them for our bodies. Right? Don't overdo anything. There you go. So, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. That our minds are in their best state when we're hungry. Think about the lion that's hunting. Now, obviously we don't want people to be starving, but if we are going to have to, have a meal in the morning, protein and fat. It's not going to give you that energy that makes you go to sleep, right? Because as soon as you get a load of energy, what you want to do is you want to conserve it. Our entire life is, what is life? Life is three things. The acquisition of energy, the conservation of energy, and making new copies of ourselves. That's the whole of life, there in a nutshell. Three things. And when we get energy, we conserve it. We try to make sure that we keep it. And you keep it by doing nothing, right? That's how you conserve energy. And it's instinctive. You can't blame people for being, if you fill them up with a huge breakfast, You can't blame them for sitting around doing nothing. It's natural. So yes, think about lions. Lions, when they've had a big breakfast, what are they? They're lying on their backs in the middle of the Serengeti, scratching themselves, right? Fast asleep. When they're hungry, when they haven't had breakfast, that's when they're alert. That's when they're up on their feet, working to round up a few zebra for dinner. And I think that's us as well. You know, we just complicate things too much. Anyway, that's my thesis. You can disagree with it if you like.